The sun dipped below the Carpathian peaks, casting the forest in hues of gold and crimson. Shadows stretched long across the ancient stone walls of Castle Bran, where silence reigned. Within the castle's towering halls, an old man with pale skin and piercing crimson eyes sat with his grandson. Alex, a boy of 10, had brought an air of joy to the otherwise solemn stronghold. The child's laughter echoed as he sketched clumsy drawings on a scroll, while his grandfather watched with a faint, rare smile. Dracula, the Lord of Shadows, had spent centuries locked in solitude, avoiding the modern world and its distractions. But Alex, the sole remaining member of his mortal bloodline, had ignited something in him long buried, the fragile yet profound tether of familial love. Tonight, as they sat by the roaring hearth, Alex babbled about a book he had found in the castle's vast library. "Grandfather, did you know people once thought the stars were gods?" Alex asked, his eyes wide with wonder. Dracula chuckled softly, his voice a low rumble. "Humans have always sought meaning in the heavens, my boy. But remember, the greatest truths often lie beneath their gaze." Before Dracula could elaborate, the air shifted, a sensation of intrusion, a predator entering sacred ground. Centuries of predatory instincts flared within him. He rose with a fluidity that defied his age, his gaze narrowing as he scanned the shadows. "Stay here," Dracula commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. Alex nodded, though his expression betrayed confusion and fear. Outside, the night thickened unnaturally as figures descended from the sky in a ship cloaked in shimmering distortion. The Zirithan assassins, a notorious band of galactic killers, moved with surgical precision. They were clad in black exosuits, their glowing visors casting an eerie light on their surroundings. The leader of the assassins, a towering alien named Korik, raised a clawed hand. "Spread out. The artifact must be here. The child is the key." Unaware of the ancient force they were trespassing upon, the assassins breached the outer walls. Dracula moved silently through the halls, his heightened senses attuned to every sound and movement. He recognized the energy emanating from the intruders, something not of this earth, a sensation he hadn't felt in over a millennium. Dracula reached the upper parapet and observed the intruders. Their weapons crackled with energy unknown to him, yet he sensed their intent was far more dangerous than their technology. He could not fathom their interest in Alex, but knew one truth: these beings would not leave without blood. As Dracula descended with unnatural speed to confront the invaders, the assassins found Alex. The boy, frightened but brave, stood with his fists clenched. "Who are you? What do you want?" Korik tilted his head, studying the child with a detached curiosity. "The artifact. Where is it?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Alex replied, his voice trembling, frustrated by what he perceived as defiance. Korik raised his weapon, a sleek device humming with energy. A single, devastating pulse of light filled the room. When it faded, Alex lay motionless on the cold stone floor. Dracula arrived a heartbeat too late, his crimson eyes locking onto the lifeless form of his grandson. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The assassins, momentarily distracted by the sound of Dracula's approach, turned to face him. Korik, oblivious to the gravity of his actions, aimed his weapon at the intruder. "You will share the child's fate if you resist," Korik warned. Dracula did not reply. Instead, he stepped into the faint light, his form towering and shadowed by the flickering torches. His eyes burned like molten rubies, his expression a mask of unyielding fury. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet, and the assassins instinctively recoiled, sensing the predator before them was something beyond their comprehension. With a flick of his hand, Dracula summoned a wall of shadows that engulfed the closest assassin. The alien's screams were cut short as the darkness crushed him into nothingness. The others opened fire, their energy bolts tearing through the air. Dracula moved faster than their eyes could follow, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Korik barked commands, but the assassins faltered, their weapons useless against the ancient power they had awakened. One by one they fell, consumed by shadow or torn apart by Dracula's monstrous strength. Finally, only Korik remained, pinned against the wall by an unseen force. The alien gasped for breath as Dracula approached, his voice a low growl. "You have taken something irreplaceable from me. Who sent you?" Korik struggled but said nothing, his pride and fear warring within him. Dracula's patience evaporated. He extended a clawed hand and plunged it into Korik's mind, extracting fragments of memory through sheer will. Images of distant worlds, a council of alien figures, and the bounty on Earth's artifact flooded Dracula's mind. Releasing the now lifeless body of Korik, Dracula stood amidst the carnage. His gaze returned to Alex's lifeless form, and for the first time in centuries, tears welled in his eyes. Kneeling beside the boy, he placed a hand on Alex's chest. "You were the light in my darkness," Dracula whispered. "And now, the stars themselves will pay." The castle trembled as Dracula unleashed a pulse of energy that surged into the night sky. It was not a cry for help, but a declaration of war. The ancient lord of vampires, once content to remain hidden, had been provoked into action. Carrying Alex's body, Dracula returned to the castle's inner sanctum. He placed the boy in a stone coffin, an expression of sorrow etched onto his face. Standing alone in the crypt, he made a vow to the child who had brought him joy in a world of shadows. "I will not rest until their blood stains the heavens," Dracula swore. The night deepened, and far beyond Earth, the Zirthan's employers would soon learn the cost of their mistake. Dracula, the Lord of Shadows, had risen once more, and nothing in the galaxy could stop him. Dracula stood atop the tallest tower of Castle Bran, his crimson eyes piercing the veil of night. The world below was silent, unaware of the storm about to engulf it. High above, the stars seemed to shimmer with mocking indifference, as if they dared him to act. His mind was no longer a swirling tempest of grief. It had solidified into an unyielding resolve. The images he had wrenched from Korik's mind had painted a vivid picture. The assassins were pawns of the Ziran Dominion, an intergalactic empire that spanned countless worlds. The artifact they sought was no treasure but Alex himself, his bloodline ancient and powerful, a remnant of forgotten magic that the Dominion craved to harness. They had come for conquest, but they had only awakened destruction. The ancient vampire had no need for modern technology to traverse the stars. His powers, honed over centuries, allowed him to manipulate shadows in ways that defied natural law. Yet even Dracula, formidable as he was, understood the need for knowledge. He would require information, an understanding of the Dominion's reach, and the means to strike at its heart. His first destination was the mountain city of Brashov, a place where rumors whispered of a man who knew of strange travelers and celestial secrets. Viktor Karloff, a reclusive scholar and occultist, was a name Dracula had encountered in decades past. If anyone understood the workings of the Dominion and their motives, it would be him. Under the cloak of darkness, Dracula traveled with the speed of the wind, arriving in the city before midnight. He moved unseen through narrow alleyways until he reached the crumbling tower that served as Karloff's home. The heavy oak door creaked open as Dracula entered, his presence silencing the air within. Viktor Karloff, a man in his 60s with a wiry frame and piercing green eyes, stood amidst shelves overflowing with arcane tomes and artifacts. He froze as the unmistakable aura of power filled the room. "Dracula," Karloff whispered, his voice trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. "What brings you here after so many years?" "I need answers," Dracula replied, his voice cold and commanding. "A group of interstellar assassins breached my domain and murdered my grandson. They sought an artifact they believed I possessed. Tell me everything you know of the Ziran Dominion." Karloff's face darkened. "The Ziran Dominion," he said, motioning for Dracula to follow him deeper into the study. "An empire built on exploitation and conquest. They scour the galaxy for remnants of ancient power, artifacts, bloodlines, anything they can wield to assert dominance. If they came to you, it means they believe you hold something critical to their plans. They found only death, Dracula said, but I must ensure no one follows them. Where is the Dominion's heart? Karloff hesitated. Their capital is Valexis Prime, a fortress world surrounded by fleets. Reaching it would be nearly impossible, but there's a way to draw them out. Strike at their outposts, disrupt their operations, force their hand. Dracula's lips curved into a thin smile. Then tell me where to begin. Karloff retrieved a map from a cluttered desk, its surface etched with symbols and alien coordinates. He pointed to a location marked in crimson ink. Here, the Dominion has established a research facility orbiting a dead star. They study dark matter and energy there, key resources for their empire. If you destroy it, they will notice. Dracula nodded and stepped toward the door, but Karloff spoke again. Be cautious, Lord of Shadows. The Zirin Dominion is unlike any foe you faced. Their technology is... Technology will not save them, Dracula interrupted, his tone final. They killed Alex. Nothing will. With that, he vanished into the night, leaving Karloff in a stunned silence. Dracula's journey to the dead star was unlike any he had undertaken before. Manipulating the fabric of reality itself, he traversed a void of space, his form cloaked in darkness that even the stars seemed to shun. When he arrived at the Zirin research facility, a sprawling construct of sleek metal and pulsating lights, he observed its defenses from a distance. Dozens of ships patrolled the perimeter, their movements precise and unrelenting. He descended like a wraith, slipping past their sensors with ease. Inside the facility, the air was sterile and heavy with the hum of machines. He moved through the corridors, a phantom in the shadows, his predatory instincts guiding him. The first encounter came quickly. A group of Zirin guards, clad in the same black exosuits as the assassins, rounded a corner and froze at the sight of him. They raised their weapons, but Dracula moved faster than thought. In a blur of motion, he tore through them, their screams silenced before they could echo. Reaching the central chamber, Dracula found what he sought, a core of concentrated dark energy, the facility's lifeblood. He placed his hands on the containment field, and the shadows within him writhed in recognition of the energy's raw power. With a surge of his will, he unleashed a cascade of destruction, the energy spiraling out of control and consuming the facility in a blinding explosion. As Dracula emerged unscathed from the wreckage, he knew his actions would send a message to the Dominion. He had drawn first blood, and they would retaliate. But that was precisely what he wanted. Far across the galaxy, on Valexis Prime, the news of the destroyed facility reached the Dominion's ruling council. The chamber, a grand hall of alien architecture, buzzed with tension. At its center stood Grand Arbiter Kael'zar, the Dominion's ruthless leader. This is no ordinary rebellion, Kael'zar growled, his voice resonating with authority. Whoever dares strike at us will learn the price of defiance. Unseen by Kael'zar, Dracula's shadows had already begun to creep into the Dominion's heart, setting the stage for a confrontation that would shake the stars themselves. The halls of Valexis Prime were silent, but the tension was palpable. Grand Arbiter Kael'zar stood at the helm of the Dominion's War Council, his imposing figure bathed in the cold glow of holographic projections. The image before him detailed the devastation wrought by the intruder, a single entity, moving with impossible precision, leaving destruction in its wake. Kael'zar's voice cut through the heavy air like a blade. This anomaly is no common insurgent. Reports indicated bypassed our advanced detection systems and obliterated the research facility without external aid. His clawed hand gestured toward a shimmering image of Dracula, captured fleetingly during the assault. What manner of creature is this? One of his advisors, a gaunt figure named Zyrel, stepped forward. The anomaly matches no known species in our database, but its method suggests a reliance on dark energy, possibly ancient or arcane in origin. Kael'zar's crimson eyes narrowed. Ancient, perhaps, but not invincible. Prepare the fleet. We will root out this threat and ensure it becomes an example for all who dare oppose the Dominion. The fleet mobilized with terrifying efficiency. Hundreds of warships, each bristling with weapons capable of eradicating entire worlds, emerged from Valexis Prime's orbital docks. Their destination, Earth, the last known location of the intruder. Dracula watched their approach from the shadows of Castle Bran. The night was unnaturally still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. His gaze swept across the horizon, where the first glimmers of the Dominion's fleet appeared in the sky like falling stars. He had prepared for this. The ruins of his ancestral homeland, long dormant, now thrummed with latent energy. Rituals older than civilization had awakened the land itself, turning the forest into labyrinths of living shadows and the mountains into sentinels of stone. Dracula's domain was no longer a mere fortress. It was a weapon, alive and ready to defend its master. As the Dominion ships descended, beams of searing light cut through the darkness, incinerating swathes of the land below. But the strikes found no purchase. Shadows coalesced into barriers, deflecting the attacks with an almost sentient awareness. The invaders' confusion grew as their weapons proved useless against an enemy that seemed to melt into the void. Dracula appeared amidst the chaos, his figure silhouetted against the burning horizon. The Dominion forces, clad in their sleek exosuits, advanced cautiously. Their commanders barked orders through crackling comms, urging discipline against the unknown foe. "You should have stayed among the stars," Dracula intoned, his voice carrying across the battlefield like a death knell. The first wave of soldiers charged, their weapons spitting plasma and concussive blasts. But Dracula was faster than their technology, weaving through their ranks with a grace that defied comprehension. His strikes were surgical, each motion ending a life with chilling efficiency. Kael'Zar himself descended from the command ship, his massive frame encased in a gilded battle suit. His presence halted the battle momentarily, as both sides recognized the weight of his arrival. "Creature," Kael'Zar growled, his voice amplified by his suit's speakers. "You stand against the Xeran Dominion. Your defiance is meaningless. Surrender, and your death will be swift." Dracula stepped forward, his expression devoid of fear. "You killed my grandson. There will be no surrender." Kael'Zar raised an armored hand, and a torrent of energy surged toward Dracula. The vampire lord countered with a wall of shadows, the collision of forces shaking the earth beneath them. The battle between the two titans was ferocious, each exchange of blows sending shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. Kael'Zar, though a master of war, found himself outmatched. Dracula's power was not born of technology or training, but of an ancient darkness that transcended the limits of physical existence. For every strike Kael'Zar landed, Dracula responded with a devastating counter, his movements fluid and unrelenting. As the duel raged on, the Dominion forces began to falter. The shadows of Castle Bran, imbued with Dracula's will, turned against them. Soldiers were dragged into the abyss, their screams swallowed by the encroaching darkness. Kael'Zar, bloodied but unbroken, unleashed a final, desperate attack. His suit's core flared with blinding energy, a self-destructive gambit designed to obliterate everything within a mile. Dracula stood firm, his eyes glowing like embers. As the energy surged toward him, he raised his hand, and the shadows surged in response, absorbing the blast in a cacophony of roaring winds and crackling light. When the dust settled, Kael'Zar lay broken at Dracula's feet. "You sought power beyond your understanding," Dracula said, his voice low and cold. "And now you pay the price." With a single motion, he ended the Dominion leader's life. The remaining Xeran forces, leaderless and terrified, retreated to their ships. Dracula watched as they fled, his crimson gaze unyielding. The message was clear. Earth was not theirs to conquer, and those who tried would face annihilation. As the last of the ships vanished into the void, the land around Castle Bran fell silent once more. Dracula stood alone, his victory hollow but necessary. The pain of Alex's death lingered, a wound that time could not heal. But he had ensured his grandson's memory would be honored, and the Dominion would think twice before returning to Earth. In the stillness that followed, Dracula turned his gaze to the stars. The Dominion had been humbled, but he knew they were not the only threat lurking in the cosmos. Others would come, drawn by Earth's mysteries and its fierce defenders. And when they did, Dracula would be waiting,